We should be all set. Recording has started. Adesh, everyone, thank you for joining. I know it's evening time. For a few of you, it's even almost night. Good morning, good evening, namaskar, wherever you are based. I haven't been online for quite a while. I've been traveling and doing some other things. You know, there is a lot to accomplish in this life. But I'm happy that you were able to find time to join me today, where I will cover some of the Yoga Sutras written by Patanjali many years ago. And to start with, I would like to note that I'll be speaking about Yoga Sutras from the perspective of Natha Yoga, which is experiential yoga. So Yoga Sutras by Rishi Patanjali, they were based on Samkhya philosophy, yet he realized the state of yoga and he translated his experience into the sutras. This is something that really common to Nathas who are practicing yoga as a spirituality and who are pathing from generation to generation in parampara, from teacher to disciple, yoga state realization, and therefore we will be uncovering some of the meanings of Yoga Sutras from the perspective of yoga state and yoga experience. If this is new to you, that's totally fine. I would say that yoga experience and everything that I will be talking about, it is easier to perceive than to understand. So if you listen to something and you don't really understand what I'm talking about, that's totally fine. You can always perceive it on the more subtle level. And then the experience, by the grace of God, uncovers itself. It takes for people years, generations, and lives of practice. So everybody has their own tempo and speed of life. So please do not compare yourself to others and to me as well. It is your life, it is your experience. It is definitely your journey. With this, let me switch to the introduction to Yoga Sutras. And as I promised, I will start with the philosophy behind Yoga Sutras. Patanjali was following Samkhya philosophy. You can Google it up. It is pretty well outlined in online resources, even in Wikipedia. I want to stress that in Samkhya, it is dualistic philosophy where you have separate spirit, which is called Purusha, and the world, which is not only the material world, it is also cognition, moral, psychology, emotions, sensors, how we perceive the world. And it is called Prakriti. So in Samkhya, you have Purusha and Prakriti, the spirit, and all the world. This is fundamental to understand because when you are reading Yoga Sutras, when you are perceiving what Patanjali was delivering to us, he was doing it from the perspective that spirit and material world or cognition, senses, emotions, they need to separate in order to comprehend the whole universe. So the spirit is kind of separating in a way from the sensoric, emotional, material part of the existence. In Nath Sampradaya, we do not separate. We do not go in the dualism and saying this exists, this doesn't exist. We stay on the precondition, and this is totally fine. It goes with the yoga concept overall, with stating the precondition that they are together. They exist in unity. So spirit and the world, they are combined. And yet, it is true, and we follow the understanding how they can be going into the subtle levels of yoga state, and I will be covering it now. So the whole story of Samkhya is that there is a spirit. The spirit is totally fine, endless, perfect, without any markings. And then in this spirit, the sensoric world appears. And the sensoric world, for us, for human beings, it appears through, you will learn this word, buddhi, through, we can call it perception, cognition, intellect. It is yet not the mind, it is not the logic, it is not something that is containing limited knowledge, it is pretty unlimited knowledge. It is cognition itself. And then in this cognition, something very important happens. Ego appears. So like, I am. I have a hand, I see the screen, I listen to Hamsanath, I am. And after ego appears, there is mind. So the ability to build logical structures. There are in total 25 levels that Samkhya outlines. I will not go into them today. I just want us to remember that from the period of time of Patanjali and everything that is written in Yoga Sutras and everything that I will be discussing today, it goes from that perspective. There is a spirit, and then there is cognition, and then there is ego. And maybe we can remember that there is mind. So such a ladder of manifestation of the world. Pretty simple, right? Easy to remember. Spirit, sensoric world starting, we can cognize it, and then while we cognize, we say, I cognize it, because I'm human being. Pretty simple. The whole yoga journey is the opposite direction. So if I were to spend like 30 seconds explaining all Yoga Sutras, I would say that it is pretty simple. You go from I cognize to cognition and to spirit. That's it. If you can do this journey on your own, that's perfect. For most people, it is, I'd say, the strongest challenge in this world. If they decide to cognize and to understand the higher states of the universe. Fun fact is that in Kashmiri Shaivism, there are even more levels to it. So if Samkhya, which Patanjali was following, has 25 levels, in Kashmiri, they worked on that higher levels, and they added many more little subtle levels. What I'm saying is that there is a huge depth into the whole state of cognition, and you can go as far as you want. We will today navigate ourselves between that level of I understand who I am to I cognize who I am to I am in a unity with spirit, or in the words of Patanjali, it will be Purusha. Because Nathas will call it absolute, Parabrahman, Atman. There are many words nowadays how spirit is called. In Christianity, they will call it God, for example. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments in our chat, in our channel. I will see them because today I'm talking to you from my laptop, and I can see the chat pretty clear. So I will follow up with the comments. The first 4 sutras are from number 1 to number 4, and I will remind you what they say. They say that yoga is when your fluctuations of consciousness, they are disappearing. And when this happens, then you as a seer, you get back to your original state, the higher state, the state of true nature, and this is when the self-realization occurs. When this is not happening, when there are fluctuations in your mind, when your mind is active, when you think and you forget, then you forget about the higher state, and you identify yourself with everything that is happening in your mind. This is the foundation of yoga, and I think this is where Patanjali could just stop writing and say, good luck, guys, with whatever you're trying to achieve. This is all you need to know. Stop your mind, go to the level of the perception, go to the level of buddhi, and there you will see Purusha. There you will see absolute. There the absolute will reflect, because the whole universe is reflecting in you. And that's all you need to do. Lucky for us, Patanjali didn't stop at Sutra number 4. He outlines the whole journey. He provides a lot of instruments. He explains how it works. From the perspective of Nath Sampradaya, this is really where it is the essence of the whole yoga state. And Nathas, they can even practice just very small little meditations or different parts of yoga just to achieve and sustain this state. When your mind, it stops working. And this doesn't mean that you're dead, because what we are used to. We are used to imagine that when our mind is not working, we actually do not live. Maybe you remember this phrase, cognito ergo sum, I am thinking, therefore I am, René Descartes. This is how you can explain what the average person thinks about this life. So if you think, if you cognize, if you actively working with your mind, therefore you are. Yoga is about switching off the mind. And when the mind is not in your way anymore, everything that is left is the reflection. Everything that is left is the way of how you observe. In yoga, you will find that it all starts with such a step of pratyahara, when your experiences, they invert. We are usually externally oriented. We are looking externally. We are perceiving with our senses externally. But when you invert, when you start observing yourself internally, this is the step towards lowering the fluctuations of mind, and this is the step towards yoga state. So the first 4 sutras, they basically describe the highest state of yoga. And again, I will repeat myself, the fun fact is that this is not the end of the journey, this is the start of the journey. Some people, when they read and they analyze Yoga Sutras, there are comments that this is when the person is getting realized. The mind is not staying in the way, chitta flow is not obscured, you realize Parabrahman. This is where the journey starts, it's not where the journey ends. Because for Natha Yogi, it is not a question to achieve realization of Brahman, it is a goal to cultivate this state and not to lose it day or night. If you have any questions, again, feel free to leave the comments. I will do a very short, humble pause to go to the second part. So if I see any questions, I will definitely answer them now. or maybe later. The second block of sutras, just two of them, number 50 and 51, that I decided to cover, is about the Samskaras. And they say that the higher Samskaras, they, in a way, prevent of the creation of lower Samskaras. And when you eliminate even the higher Samskaras, then you achieve the state of Samadhi. What is important here, and why I decided to cover these two sutras, is that every next step of your practice of yoga, coming from dharana to dhyana, from dhyana to samadhi, these are the samskaras, these are the habits that you create. There are the habits for the higher states, and there are the habits of the lower states. Patanjali explains to us that every action that is not oriented towards realizing the God is the habit of the lower state. But if you do the same action, exactly the same action, but it will be oriented towards realizing the higher state, then it will be the higher samskara. For example, you are washing the dishes. Very simple example. And you spend your time looking at how dishes are getting clean. And you may think that you're tired or you're spending extra time. You could have used dishwasher. These are the lower samskaras. If you are cleaning the dishes and you are trying to realize how the God works in you through cleaning the dishes, what is the experience, how you can even cultivate the overall state of yoga during the dishwashing process, this is when you start building up the samskaras of higher level. In meditation, this corresponds to the process of observance. If you sit in pratyahara and you continuously spend time in this state, then you create higher samskaras. Then, when you sit and you spend more time in dharana, and you can achieve it faster, maybe easier for you, it really depends on the state, on the situation, I totally understand. Then you're creating again even more higher samskaras. This way, Patanjali means that you can grow from one level, from one anga of yoga to another until you achieve samadhi. And in samadhi, in this state, he explained that there are two levels. There is sabija and nirbija, or savikalpa and nirvikalpa. Samadhi with some impressions and without them. We won't be covering samadhi a lot today. It is just the path, and achieving the state of samadhi, again, this is not the ultimate goal. This is where everything starts. During lifetime, I'm more than sure that many people who are not even practicing any spiritual, like paramparas, lineages, or even non-spirituality, they can experience, then they will experience samadhi state, just because this is a natural state for us. Samadhi exists all the time, like so absolute and Purusha, they are here. They are in you, or you are in them. It's a matter of words. So it is not the ultimate goal to achieve the higher states of yoga. It is a very natural process, so we should not worry about it at all. But there are some things that stay in a way, and they are pretty challenging to overcome. And the first thing is egoism. And this is how I transit to the next block of sutras that start with Sutra 2.6, where Patanjali explains the egoism as identification of yourself, of a seer, with the ability to see. And that's really interesting, because we are used to take any experience that we have and tell us that this is our experience. I'm talking. I am explaining, I am sitting, I am walking, I am working. So everything that starts with I am doing something and experiencing this action, it is egoism. It's very simple. I won't say that this is really bad to have an ego. If we didn't have ego, we could not overcome it. It's not bad to have ego. It's important to control it, to understand how you can silence it. It's very natural to have ego, but it is supernatural or extra natural not to be under the influence of ego, because this is very important for yoga practice. It is very important for the spirituality, that all your actions, all your ideas, thoughts, they are coming or they are serving not your ego. It will grow otherwise. All the power, all the efforts, they will just grow the ego itself. All the spiritual journey will result into the whole big egoism. So when we identify the seer or ourself, the person who sees, with the process of seeing, this is what Patanjali says in ego. Another way to explain it is the cognition. For example, when you have different experiences, when you cognize something, when something is happening to you and you say, this is happening to me, my pain, my samadhi, my pratyahara, my yoga experience, my religious realization. This is the story of the egoism. And this is the biggest challenge on the way to building the higher samskaras, to building your journey to absolute, to Purusha, as Patanjali would say. This is one of the biggest challenges that Prakriti brings to you. Because after, you remember, there is Purusha, and then Prakriti starts unfolds, and after Buddhi, after cognition, the ego appears the first. So ego is in the way to Purusha. Ego is in your way to attaining higher states. Higher states, they are here, they are everywhere. And they do not expect you to achieve them. There is no need of achievement in that state, because there is no achievement at all. But for us, for the human beings, for someone with the limited abilities of mind work, ego is one of the main blocks or challenges. I love when people say that they have no ego, or they have very weak ego, or that they are not influenced by the ego. This is very interesting to hear. I would say that we all have our enormous egos. It's only the question if we were able to control it and to silence it down, and not to get influenced by it at all times. But in my opinion, it won't go away. It will stay there because it is a part of the world. But we can learn not to be influenced by it in a strong way. Thank you for your question, chat. I see it, and I will answer it a little bit later. And then Patanjali outlines from Sutra 2.6 and forward what is attraction, disgust, and then how the karma is created. And this is so simple. This is exceptionally simple. When you have some pleasure in life, you have attraction to this pleasure. And those pleasures are different for different people, right? What you like, what colors you like, what sweets you like, what salty food you like, what temperature of the room you like can be different from other people. the pleasures in life, they attract human beings. Like, I want more of pleasure. No one said they want more of suffering, right? So attraction is coming from a pleasure, but then there is a suffering itself. And when you see suffering, when you feel suffering, most of the time, if not all the time, you will feel disgust. You don't want to have it, right? You want to get rid of it. You want to get away from it. And this is the whole big world. You're living between pleasure and suffering. And you're trying to navigate, and usually you're trying to navigate towards pleasure, not towards suffering, unless suffering is the form of pleasure for you, which can be for some people. Both pleasure and suffering, in the next sutra, Patanjali said, those are illusions. Because there is, in the higher state, there is no pleasure or suffering. There is bliss, endless bliss, but there is no pleasure and no suffering. So pleasure and suffering are the foundational illusions. And in those states, karma is being cooked, is being produced, karma seeds are being planted. You want more of the pleasure, you plant karma there. You want to forget about the suffering, you want to see the suffering, you plant karma there. And this is the way how the enormous process of rebirth is going. And depending on what you were doing, if your life was with some of the levels of karma, higher levels, then your rebirth is happening in one way. If you really failed, you did some very bad things, you planted karma for the rebirth in the other dimension, into other situation. Yoga is about overcoming the karma journey, overcoming, planting the seeds of karma, or seeing and being attached to pleasure, seeing and being disgust from suffering. Yoga is samarasya. It is the unique understanding of everything about that. And when we overcome egoism, this is our step towards being detached from pleasure and from suffering. Such an interesting journey in the universe, which Patanjali outlines to us. I will stop here and take Chatu's question, which is, where the practicality in first place is coming from, and what's the point of this journey from Jivatma to Paramatma, and why it didn't even start? That's a fundamental, absolutely wonderful question, and thank you, Chatu, for asking it. I will navigate ourselves from Samkhya, because I am not Samkhya expert, to Nath Sampradaya, a little bit more, right? In Nath Sampradaya, we say that there is Shiva and there is Shakti, there is consciousness and there is energy. And this is the endless flow, their endless game. And the whole idea is that Shiva, the consciousness, is getting to know himself through many, many, many forms of Shakti. You can say in a way that this is Purusha Prakriti, but Samkhya is a little bit different. It is still dualistic, and in that you need to separate spirit from the material world. In Nath Sampradaya, it goes both ways. You can go back to Samadhi and stay there and realize only Shiva, or you can come back to the material world and realize that here, no problem at all. Both ways work. On some level of this journey between lower and higher levels, you understand that on the higher levels, there is no doubt, there is no question of mind why this exists. Because when we ask ourselves, why? this is our mind working. It is trying us to give some meaning to the life from mind point of view. This is why yogis, they are perceiving universe from outside of the mind. And to be honest, everything happens to be very straightforward and clear there. The whole idea is that the fundamental work of consciousness is reflection and cognition of itself. There is no suffering, there is no pleasure, there is no kind of limited experiences. But then, what you are talking about, when it even starts, this is when the time comes into the play. And at some level, the time appears. It is not on all levels. And when the time appears, this is when we ask ourselves, when is the start and when is the end? On the higher level, there is no start and no end. Sorry, Shaito. I'm so sorry. No start, no end. It is endless. There is no form. It is formless. There is no marks. It is markless. And this is the beauty of spirituality and yoga, because this is when you are getting out of the limited perceptions, and therefore you're getting out of this continuous cycle, I would say vicious cycle of suffering and pleasure, in which we are trapped when we are very much limited into our body and mind. We think that the whole world is about suffering and pleasure, Okay, let's have less suffering and let's have more pleasure. That's the whole concept. Yogis, they go beyond. And for many people, this sounds a little bit mystical. I'd say for some even unrealistic. But it is what it is. So I hope in a way I have answer your question. The point of this journey for us, for people, for those who were born in this incarnation in our human body, the whole point is that we can achieve the higher state. I don't know about dolphins, I don't know about spiders or about the stone. I haven't experienced myself that directly, but from what I can grasp, from what I can feel, and from what I can perceive, this is the part of the human rebirth. In the human body, we can actually realize the higher states. This is why in the legends, even deities, they are asking to be incarnated in the body of yogi, just to attain the absolute level. I do believe that the best way to get this knowledge is through direct transition of this knowledge from Guru. And it is a big blessing if you met your spiritual Guru in your life, who leads you from darkness to light, and who provides you with the knowledge of the universe, with the realization of absolute, and with the understanding of the most mystical and maybe sometimes what we think the darkest points in the universe, which are the lightest. Thank you for the question. It is really important and fundamental. And the last part of the sutras are the sutras from 3.1 to 3.8, where Patanjali, he outlines the levels, the angas, the parts of yoga. And two remarks here. The first remark, he outlines it as a ladder, bottom up. So you start with asana, then you go to pranayama, then you achieve pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. And what he says that when you practice every next level, for example, when you practice pratyahara, which is controlling, or not pranayama, sorry, when you practice pranayama, which is controlling of your prana, usually breathing technique, for you, asana, the previous level, is the external and pranayama is internal. Because asana, it is movement of body, and pranayama is movement of air, of the process of inhalation, of exhalation. Then when you move from pranayama to pratyahara, pranayama becomes external practice, and pratyahara is even more internal, because now you are inverting your feelings. When you are moving from pratyahara to dharana, then pratyahara becomes external. And bear with me, I know you guess where I'm going, but try to stay there. Pranayama is now external for you, pratyahara internal. Then pratyahara external, and dharana is internal. It means that you are going to the center. Not only you're going through the ladder, but you're in a way unplugging and getting back to samadhi. And samadhi then is internal practice for you, and everything as external. It's like thousands and thousands of kilometers of miles away from you. You can't even remember what was asana, or you can't even remember what was pranayama anymore, pratyahara or dharana or dhyana. And even in samadhi, you have the state where there is nirbija samadhi, the state without any impressions, without any vikalpas, to which everything else is external. And this is a very straightforward yogic experience. When you move between those states, they can feel as external, internal to you. And you can feel that there is more subtle level and there is grosser level. In Nath Sampradaya, this is not a ladder. You don't need to start with asana and then to go to pranayama and on and on and on. It is good to practice everything. But in Nath Sampradaya, this is more of the horizontal, and you can find a very, very, very old video from Guruji Masendranath where he explains it. Because you bring samadhi state to asana. You bring samadhi state to pranayama. You bring samadhi state to every anga of yoga. And this is how I'm coming back to the very, very beginning of Yoga Sutras Patanjali, where we said that achieving the state of samadhi or achieving the state of yoga, the state where your mind is calm, when your vrittis in your chitta are not there anymore, is the beginning. It is not the ultimate goal. It is just the beginning. Because when you achieve this state, when you achieve the state of yoga, the state of samadhi, which is the most natural state to every one of us, then you can bring this state into every action in your life. Because this is when the whole story of yoga realization is unfolding again. And a quick remark, sometimes people are really confused because they think that they haven't achieved the state of samadhi and this is the biggest challenge for them and they are not yogis. This is not true. It is just the way how we can explain things to ourselves. I do believe that our ultimate mission is to follow what is important to us and not to try to measure if we have achieved some state or we haven't achieved some state. We are where we are moving at the speed that is acceptable and possible for us in this life. And until we are dedicated to our path, and in Adha Sampradaya, until we are dedicated to Parampara and to our Guru, everything is fine, to my humble opinion. And it is Guru who can tell you or help you understand what you have or not have achieved. It is not our job to measure ourselves and to rate our homework. We are doing what we can do. We are overcoming ourselves every day. But I think that it is not a good idea to try to achieve something. What Patanjali doesn't say, but maybe I may add that it is a lot about letting things go, about relaxation. It is the highest level of giving up the control, as we know the control. And this is what is expected from us when we practice yoga. That we won't try to achieve something, that we won't try to prove something. Spirituality is about going back to ourselves, inverting our senses, not trying to kind of work hard to become, that big muscled super overachievers. I think this is it. This is what I wanted to cover today. If you will have any questions later, feel free to ask. It is always easier to share something when there are questions. But again, thank you everyone for joining and for your time. This is a part of the journey, wherever you are, and I'm wishing you all the best in your realization and in achieving the peace of your mind and the peace of your heart and keeping it throughout the life. Adesh.